Hi everyone, this is preparing for the Praxis CORE case exam online workshop. Hopefully this workshop will help answer a lot of questions that you may have about the Praxis CORE or case exam. Some of the things that we're going to be covering in this workshop will be overview of the different parts of the test, the reading, writing, math, where to find various study materials to help you study for the test, how to register for the test, and some other frequently asked questions. The Praxis CORE is broken down into 3 different areas. First, it covers reading, which will last for about 85 minutes, writing, which will take about 100 minutes to take, and mathematics, which will take 85 minutes also. When you're scheduling the test, you can choose 3 different options. First, you can schedule it as a combined version where you're registering for all 3 tests, which is $135. It takes 5 hours to take the combined version of all 3 tests. You can also have the option of scheduling 2 tests at the same time for $125, or you can schedule an individual version where you're registering for 1 test each time, and that is $85 for each test. The test is only given on the computer at a testing center, or if you are eligible for special accommodations, then a paper version can be arranged. But you must work with ETS ahead of time in order to arrange any accommodations. So let's look at what kind of questions you're going to be looking at when you're taking the Praxis CORE. You're going to be running into basically 2 types of questions, although the writing test will have 2 constructive responses or 2 essays to write. But as you're doing the multiple choice, you will have either traditional multiple choice questions where you're just supposed to select 1 correct answer, or you could have interactive questions. And these interactive questions are where you may have to select multiple options on the multiple choice test. You could have to type in an entry box, click on check boxes where you answer the question. You may have to click on parts of a graphic, click on parts of a sentence. You may drag and drop answer choices into targets on the screen, or you could select options from a down menu. These are just the different kinds of things that you could run into as you're doing it. So let's look at the individual Praxis tests. You first have the Praxis CORE. Now when you take the test, you're either going to start with the reading test or the math. The writing is usually last. So first we're going to look at the reading. The reading has 56 selected response questions. It takes 85 minutes, so if you break this down, it'll be about 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. The types of questions that you're going to have are you're going to have passages that you're going to read and then answer multiple choice questions or some of those interactive questions based on those passages. So you'll either have paired passages, which you usually are only going to have 1, and the paired passage question is usually going to be at the end of the test, and you'll have to answer 4 to 7 questions on those paired passages. Now the paired passages is going to be where you have 1 passage that's about 100 words and then another passage that's about 100 words, and you're going to have to read those passages and answer all the questions based on those passages. Then you'll also have long passages, which will be about 200 words, and you're going to have about 4 to 7 questions based on that long passage. Usually I would say it's going to go more towards the 7 question range with a longer passage. Then you're going to have a short passage that's about 100 words or less, and you're going to have 2 or 3 questions according to that short passage. You may have a question that's going to ask a brief statement. It may be a sentence or 2, and that would just be 1 question. And then you're going to have 1 question in the test that is going to be a graphic. It's either going to be a graph or bar chart, a pie chart. It could be a picture, to where you're going to have to answer a question based on that graphic. You may be asked to answer a multiple choice question on that graphic, or you may be asked to click somewhere on the screen on the graphic to answer the question. So, with that in mind, the test is graded according to 3 different sections. Now, these questions will be mixed throughout the test. You're not going to hit one section and it's just going to be that you pass that section, that's 35% test. No. You're going to have a passage and you may have one key ID question, you may have one craft and structure question, or 2 or 3 of each of those, and then a question that's going to talk about integration of knowledge and ideas. So it's all going to be mixed. But know that all of your key idea and detailed questions are going to be 35% of the test. And so then all of your craft, structure, and language skills are going to be 30% of the test. And then your integration of knowledge and ideas are going to be 35% of the test. And so that's how they're going to break it down when they're grading it. Now, the test is based on a 200-point scale. And please refer to ets.org to see exactly what the score is that you have to make. So in the key ideas and details section, in this section, you're going to have to closely read a text. You're going to be making logical inferences. In other words, you're reaching a conclusion based on specific evidence. Your inferences is not based on what you think you know. You should be able to find the information and inferences within the actual text. You may be asked to connect specific ideas, address author differences, and determine something that maybe is speculated about or an uncertain matter. So this is kind of like where you're going to get your main idea, your author's purpose, your inferences when it has evidence behind it, is these types of questions. The next type of question, you're going to be asked to interpret words for craft, structure, language skills, recognize the tone of word choices, analyze the text structure, assess points of view, fact and opinion, word meaning, understanding ranges of words and nuances. So let's look at each of these. Interpret words and phrases. In other words, they're going to maybe highlight a word, underline a word, and ask you to define it or choose the meaning behind it or the tone behind it. You are to use what else is written in the paragraph to help you interpret that word. The tone, is it negative, positive? Is it determined? Is the author trying to inform? That kind of thing is what you're going to be looking at with the tone of word. The text structure, is this an informative text? Is it a persuasive text? Are they telling a story? That kind of thing. Your points of view. Remember, your points of view is always going to be, is it first person, second person, third person point of view? You talking from the point of view of like a teacher, a student, a person on the street, that kind of thing that you're going to be looking at with point of view. Fact and opinion. Everybody should know a fact is something that is, you can prove it to be true. An opinion is in a belief. So they're going to ask you some of those questions as to whether or not some statement is a fact or opinion based on the text. Word meanings, you're basically going to have to decide what the word means based on what the passage says. And then understanding of range of words and nuances, just kind of what the little ticky things that may help influence whether a word is negative or positive, that you may have as you're reading. It's kind of like saying yes, great, good. Well, I mean, good and great kind of mean basically the same thing, but great has a stronger nuance and a stronger, more powerful feeling. So that kind of thing that you're going to be looking at.
And then you're going to have the integration of knowledge and ideas. And a lot of this is going to be where you're comparing the two texts. You're going to, and your graphic, where you're analyzing diverse media content, and that means your graphic, where it's either a bar chart or a pie chart. Evaluating arguments in a text. And that's kind of like with the two passages, you're going to analyze whether what one argument is on a topic in one passage, and then what's the argument in a text in another passage. And then analyze how two or more texts address similar themes. And that's the same thing with those two different passages. Are they looking at the same topic but differently? So now some tips for some slow readers as you're going through. Not everybody reads at the same speed. So this is just some tips, because you only have about 1.5 minutes per question. So you need to not take too long as you're trying to read through the material. So if you're finding something that you're reading and it's really hard, you're not finding it quite as easy to understand, skip it and see if maybe you can't figure out what around it means. And that can help answer some of the questions. As you are reading the questions, see if you can't eliminate some of the wrong answers. Just go ahead and just go, no, that one can't be right. It's a little off. Resist the urge to skim. Still even though you don't have a lot of time, still take the time to read it carefully. Skimming, you're not quite getting the full gist of it. You're just kind of getting an inkling. And don't ponder skipping the question. Try it. Praxis isn't going to penalize you or count extra off because you got the question wrong. They're just going to give credit for the ones you got right. So you're not going to have an extra penalty in there, like in some standardized tests if you answered incorrectly. So at least attempt the question. So some other strategies for answering some of the reading questions. Use the knowledge from the text. Your answer must be supported by what is in the text, not by what you think you know. So if it has to be based in evidence, is constantly what Praxis says. So if you can prove it by what is actually stated in the text, then that's your answer. You don't need outside knowledge to answer the questions correctly, but you can eliminate a wrong answer based on your outside knowledge you may have. So know that you can understand and believe what you have written there. Read the instructions carefully. Is that word not in there? Because a lot of times we may miss it as we're reading the questions. They're looking for which one is not an idea that the author is trying to convey to the reader. Which choice is not a characteristic of this character. So make sure that you pay attention. Some tests will highlight the word not, they'll underline it or put it in all caps. I can't always say that's the case for Praxis. So make sure you take the time to read the instructions carefully and read the question carefully. A lot of times, not quite understanding what is being asked of you is half the battle in trying to answer the question. Read the question before you read the passage. They're going to pop up the screen where you have the passage on one side of your screen and then the question on the next side. And so kind of glance at the question so that you're reading with a purpose. And they're always going to indicate when they give you that passage how many questions you're going to be answering based on that passage. So you know that you can kind of gauge as you're reading, maybe that might be something else I need to pay attention to. Use the context of the passage to help you answer the question. Don't just pay attention to the one sentence that they may highlight. What else did the sentences around it say? That's what the context is. You a lot of times can't have a pure understanding of what something is saying unless you understand what's being said around it. So make sure that you read the entire passage and just don't go for that one sentence because the question says it. For longer passages, read the opening and closing paragraphs first. This will kind of give you a gist of what's going on in the questions in the passage, so you can kind of read with a purpose and an understanding of what you're looking for. So you kind of understand what's in the beginning, what are they introducing, and then how they're closing it. Maybe you can kind of get a feeling of whether it's a negative or positive article that you're reading to answer the questions. For the select one or more choice questions, consider each choice separately. Don't say, well, this one's right, and because that one's right, this one's also right. Choose them separately. Say, yes, that one's right, and it doesn't matter if this one's right or the rest of them are right or not, but that one I know is. And then if there's something else that's right, go for it. Now, just because it says select one or more doesn't mean that you always have to select more. It may just be one answer is correct and they're trying to trip you up. But in some of those, you're going to be selecting more than one. So do keep that in mind. And this is one of the instructions that you need to pay attention to that you may miss. You may just see the select one or select more. So that kind of thing that you need to pay attention to as you're reading the instructions. Don't make assumptions. Remember that inferring, you base your answer on the text. Assuming, you're basing your answer on outside information. They are presenting you information, not guaranteeing that you've ever heard of it before. So they're asking you to answer the question based on what's in front of you. You do have outside information that you've learned throughout the years. Yes, you know it. It may help you eliminate, but base your answers on the text. And I think that's where we sometimes get hung up. Maybe we think we know it because we learned it somewhere else, but we may not be remembering it correctly. So see if you can't always bring it back to an answer to the test. It's kind of like we're always asking, or we're going to be asking our future students to justify their answers. And you're doing that by basing your answer in the text. You're justifying what you're saying. When a question asks for the main idea or the author's purpose, stay away from a detailed answer. A main idea or the author's purpose is an overreaching idea. So in other words, it's not something tiny, itty-bitty, specific, like the Declaration of Independence was written in 1776. It's something that's broad, like America fought in the American Revolution to free itself from unrepresented taxation. That's a broad topic, a broad main idea. And then little things underneath it would prove it. So that it would be the answer of what a main idea would be. So try to find the one that answers it based on the text that's a broad answer if it says main idea or purpose. If it's a tiny little bitty thing like my dog Spot, then that is going to be too specific and you need to choose another answer. If answering a paired passage question, take a moment to determine the opinions of the two authors before answering the question. And you should always read both passages before answering the question because you're comparing the two. Just don't think you can read one passage and not read the other one and get the question correct. So those are just some things about the reading test. So let's take a look at what makes up the writing test. The writing test, you'll have 40 selected response questions and 2 constructed response questions that will be essays. You have 100 minutes to take the entire test, and like I said, this is usually at the end. So I have seen a lot of people not pass this section because they were just exhausted by the end of the test when they got to the section. So just kind of go ahead and going in, preparing yourself for this is the last part.
It is 40 minutes for the selected response questions, and it's about 1 minute per question. And the selected response, again, are the multiple choice questions. And then you have two 30-minute periods to answer the constructed response or the essays. Your selected response questions are going to be based on usage, which is like your grammar and mechanics rules, sentence correction, revision in context, and research skills. Your two essay questions will be an argumentative essay and an informative essay. Now, just like I broke down the reading test, the writing test is broken down like this. The two essays plus 6 to 12 selected response questions, or your multiple choice questions, will be 60% of your test. And these are the ones that are based on revision, where you're having to revise a sentence or a passage in context to make it sound better. And so you'll know if those are the ones with the longer passage, and I'll talk about those more in a minute. And then your second part, which is 40% of the test, which is the rest of the multiple choice questions, is your language and research skills for writing. So some tips to keep in mind as you're going throughout all the selected response questions. Watch out for comma splices. One thing I would do is I would go to a site like Purdue OWL or Grammar Lady or something and find a list of all the comma rules. And I would study those comma rules because I promise you they're going to put them in there. They love to write questions on comma errors. Second, there are going to be questions where you're going to be given the option for no error. And there will also be questions where they're going to be repeat what it is and not say no error. Just because it is phrased differently in some of the options doesn't mean it's wrong. You're looking for some rule to actually be broken. So no error is an acceptable answer. So don't be afraid to choose it. There will be cases where no error, or choosing the selection where it looks exactly like it is in the question, is correct. So don't be afraid to choose that. And don't think that you just need to rewrite it or choose the answer where it may be rewritten a little bit differently. You're looking for the rule break. It's the capitalization error. Do I have the comma in the wrong place? Did I forget to use a conjunction correctly? Did I have a semicolon wrong, a colon wrong, something like that? When reading the long passage questions, keep an eye out for sentences that are out of place. There's going to be a time where, just like in the reading, you'll have a passage on one side, the multiple choice question asking questions about revising the paragraph. Read the whole passage first before you answer the question, because it's going to be based in context, kind of like you're revising an essay for class. You know, your English teachers love to put all those red markings and give it to you and say, rewrite it. Well, that's what you're doing in those long passage questions and answering the questions for revision. The research questions that are included on the core test for writing can usually be answered with common sense. They're usually something like, why should I have articles cited within an essay to avoid plagiarism? Why should I use sources when I'm writing to help back up my ideas or to give strength to my argument? That kind of thing. So you need to make sure that just kind of review that, or just basic ideas, common sense when you're answering those. So let's look at the usage questions. What kind of errors are they going to be looking at? In these usage questions, they're usually going to give you a sentence, and parts of the sentence are going to be underlined, and you have to find the error. You're not going to have to correct the error. You just have to find the error. So it could be incorrect punctuation, most particularly commas, also semicolons and apostrophes. So those would be the three rule sets that I would make sure I look at. It's commas, semicolons, and apostrophes. They don't usually go into some of the more difficult punctuation errors that you may have. Pronoun usage, particularly pronoun and antecedent errors, like
Am I writing with a singular pronoun and then I switched to plural pronoun? Was I saying he and then moving to she? That kind of thing. Or do I have vague pronouns where I'm not sure exactly who I'm referring to? You also will have verb tense, whether or not I'm in the past tense or the present tense. Or did I have like have spoke, and it should be have spoken. So am I, that kind of thing. Subject verb agreement. Do I have a plural subject and a singular verb? And remember, a singular verb ends in S and a plural verb does not, as a key thing out there. Unlike the singular subject usually does not end in S, and a plural subject does. Word choice, especially like affect and effect, between, among. So look at some of your difficult word pairings there that you may have to choose between. Answering sentence correction questions. In these questions, they're going to give you 5 choices for rewriting an underlined portion of the sentence. And this is one is you're going to be trying to correct the sentence if there is a mistake. The first choice always states what is underlined with no changes. Okay? And remember, any correction that you're making should not change the meaning of the sentence. A lot of times they may be messing with how the verb is written. It may mess with whether or not you have an adjective or an adverb, where it has an ly at the end of the word or not like that. Should you write it like that? So you're going to be looking specifically for word choice, sentence construction, correct grammar, and correct punctuation. There's usually only going to be one thing that you're going to be correcting when you make that correction. So that is the kind of thing you're going to be looking for. Answering revision and context questions. These questions ask you to edit or revise a passage to make it better. It's usually going to be about a 100-word passage, and it may be a clumsy or incorrect sentence that's mixed among the passage. Focus on word choice, style, tone, grammar, and organization. Some passages may not have any revision to it. It is okay to say, no, there's not a mistake. Think of the passage as your first draft of an assigned essay that you're revising for a better grade. So again, always read the passage first before you try to answer the question based on the highlighted sentence, because you're going to need that context when you're answering the question. Then you're going to have research skills questions, and these will cover a correct citation, relevance and credibility of sources, and appropriate research strategies. Now, I know it does say correct citation up there. The Praxis does not say whether or not your citations are going to be in APA or MLA formation. I think the main thing they're pointing out, are you giving credit to the author? Are you pointing out the title of the journal or the book that you're citing? That kind of thing that they're going to be asking about in that kind of thing with the correct citation. So the next part of the writing test is your essay. So these are some general essay tips, but I'm going to give you some more specifics at looking at each essay in just a minute. Establish your point quickly. Make a strong first impression. So make sure you have an introductory paragraphs, but don't make it too long. You probably only need about 3 sentences for a good introduction. Organize each body paragraph around a strong topic sentence. Have your main idea, that's your topic sentence. Make sure each paragraph can be traced back to the introduction. If you're saying something that has nothing to do with the introduction, erase it. Use strong verbs and precise nouns when you're talking. Try to use those action words, not a lot of was, is, are. Be concise. This is not an English test. Well, yes, it is about English, but you're not writing it for an English teacher where you have to use all that flowery, big language. This is not a test to know how many big words you know. This is a test that is asking you to convey an idea. So you don't need to have a lot of big words, a lot of flowery language, using all the alliterations or similes or any of that kind of stuff. Just be concise in your writing. And then strive for a final conclusion that delivers a final punch. Your conclusion does not have to be very long. It can be about 3 sentences, just like what you've wrote in your introduction. And I'll give you some more clues for that in just a second. So, one of the essays you're going to have to write is an argumentative essay. And this is where they're going to give you an opinion. You have to state whether you want to agree or disagree with the opinion. So let's look at the instructions they're going to give you. What they're going to do is they're going to give you a paragraph that has the opinion, and then they're going to give you this next part. Discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with this opinion. Support your views with specific reasons and examples from your own experiences, observations, or readings. So, you need to decide whether you agree or disagree with the topic, and then why you agree or disagree with the topic with examples. So, the first paragraph of my essay, and I would probably do about a 4-paragraph essay. You could do a 3-paragraph. I would, in the first paragraph, my introduction, explain whether I agree or disagree with the opinion, and maybe a little bit as to why. My second paragraph, I'm going to give reason 1 and then give a specific example to back it up, and write my paragraph based on that. Paragraph 3, I'm going to give reason 2 with a specific example to back it up as to why I have that opinion about that opinion they give. And then my conclusion, I'm going to restate my opinion, summarize my main argument, and give some warnings or consequences of what may happen if you don't believe like I believe. So that would be what I would do for an argumentative essay, to break it down. This just kind of gives you a path. I'm making sure that I cover everything that is in the instructions, and I cover all the points, because you need to understand, when the graders are reading this, they're reading it according to a rubric. And so they're going, in the introduction, did it have an agreement or a disagreement? So if I can clearly and plainly state that in my first paragraph, I've got that one. Did I have reasons? So if I base 2 paragraphs on my reasons, I'm good. Did I have examples from either my own experiences or observations or readings to back it up within that paragraph, to back up that reason? If I've got that, I can mark it. Did I conclude it? They're going to have that as part of the rubric. And if I can just make sure I do that, wrap it up, I'm checking off things on that rubric that I know I've gotten to help kind of build up some of maybe a part that I may not have quite as strong, maybe like with some of the word choice, or maybe a little bit of the organizational. So this way I'm breaking apart the instructions and I'm making sure I'm getting some of those high points. Now, let me just go ahead and state this. One thing that you probably want to make sure that you avoid. I can't guarantee that you can always avoid a contraction in your writing, but they're looking for a formal essay. Contractions is not always considered formal English. Neither is absolutely avoid the word you, Y-O-U. It is second person informal language. Do not use this when you're writing this essay. Use things like one or someone, something like that. Okay, so we have the other essay, which is the informative essay, and they're going to give you instructions. They're going to give you 2 passages in your instructions. So let's look at the instructions. You're to read the 2 passages carefully. And they'll give you, before this, they'll give you a brief outline of the topic. And it could be something like copyright, oil, pet care, something that you may know nothing about. But the 2 passages will help inform you about the topics. So let's go back to the instructions. Read the 2 passages carefully, and then write an essay in which you identify the most important concerns regarding the issue and explain why they are important.
Your essay must draw on information from both of the sources. In addition, you may draw on your own experiences, observations, or reading. Be sure to cite the sources whether you are paraphrasing or direct quoting. So let's break it apart just like we did before. Make sure you read both passages in the essay. That was in the instructions, and don't forget to cite. Now, citing in this informative essay, it does not matter if you're using APA or MLA. In the example I saw the ETS gave, they use a parenthetical citation and they just put the author's name or part of the title in parentheses. Or they may have done that in the year. So just choose one, be consistent. And make sure you have a citation from both passages. So, the way I would set up an informative essay, my first paragraph would introduce the topic. Doesn't have to be long, needs to have 3 sentences, we'll do it. The second paragraph, I'm going to choose one fact, main idea that kind of gives the main points of the first passage and lay it out in my first passage informing on this topic. And I can be able to cite it. So that way I know in my second paragraph I covered the first passage. Then in paragraph 3, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull out an important fact that can inform on this topic from passage 2, and I'm going to discuss it in paragraph 3. And I make sure I cite it. So that way I make sure I covered both passages. My fourth paragraph is the conclusion. I'm just going to restate the main premise or what the main topic is of this essay. Challenge the readers about the topic or state where you think the topic will go in the future. This could be anywhere about 2 to 3 sentences. Your introductory paragraphs and conclusion paragraphs never have to be that long. 3 sentences is a good size. About 4 to 5 sentences on the rest of the paragraphs is pretty good. So you're not expected to write a huge lengthy essay. Just, you're conveying ideas. So keep that in mind as you're writing. So the final part of the test is the Praxis CORE mathematics test. This test is going to have 56 selected response questions. Now, these are going to be some form of multiple choice or entry boxes. You're going to have 85 minutes to answer the questions just like you did in the reading test. So you'll have about 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. You'll either have single selection multiple choice questions, you'll have multiple selection multiple choice questions, or you'll have where you have a box and you're going to enter a number. You will have access to an on-screen calculator as you are completing the mathematics portion of the test. There'll be a little button you can hit to have it pop up on the screen. They want to give you the opportunity to answer it without making any computation errors. Do note, is a very basic calculator, just like the one that pops up when you hit the calculator on your computer. So just note that as you're thinking about taking the test with the calculator. Now, the breakdown of the test, it's divided into 4 sections. Number and quantity is the first section. Algebra and functions is the second. The third is geometry, and the fourth is statistics and probability. And you'll notice the breakdown of 30% of your test is for each of the first 2 sections, and then the last 2 sections of geometry and statistics and probability are each worth 20% of the test. Now, it's not going to be broken into sections just like the reading. You're going to have all your math mixed together. So let's look at each section and what kind of topics could appear in those sections. So for number and quantity, you're going to have number integers, representations of numbers in more than one way. In other words, whether you're turning a number from a whole number to a decimal to a fraction, that kind of thing, or moving a percentage to a decimal, that kind of thing. Place value, whether tens, hundreds, thousands, and then your hundredths and so forth. Properties of whole numbers, equivalent computational procedures, ratios, proportions, and percentages. That's what is listed under number and quantity. And I would look at some of those topics as I'm studying. Algebra and functions is going to have to do equations and inequalities, recognizing various ways to solve a problem, determining the relationship between verbal and symbolic expressions. So maybe, some of your word problems, and you're asked to interpret graphs for math values and basic function definitions. Geometry, characteristics and properties of geometric shapes. So make sure you understand, triangles, right angles, the different types of triangles, how to do area, perimeter, diameter of those different types of shapes, the Pythagorean theorem, transformation of different shapes, and the use of symmetry to analyze mathematical situations. So the one thing I would do here is I would make sure I review those formulas that go along with geometry, area, perimeter, and all that kind of things, so that I can know them for the test. They're not going to give them to you. So you need to make sure you kind of have an idea of what they are before you enter the test. Statistics and probability, this part assesses, you're going to read and interpret a visual display of quantitative information, understand the correspondence between data and graphs, make inferences from a data display, determine median, mean, mode, and come up with probability outcomes. So just kind of review, especially mean, median, mode, and determining a probability. Make sure you understand how to read a graph. That kind of thing is this area. If you have taken the PPST previously, and this is your first time taking the core version, this part is new to the core. It was not on the PPST, so do keep that in mind. So some test-taking strategies for taking the math test. You solve equations versus determining what must be solved. Use some estimation and approximation if you can. Use the calculator. And quickly try to see, is this one that I can do in my head, or do I need to pull out the calculator and take that time? Guess as a last resort. Try to work backwards if you can't work from the how to do the problem. Work from the answer and see if you can't get it to the question. And then see if you can avoid most common wrong answers. That something just seems completely out of base according to what the problem is. Then you can just automatically skip that one. So after reviewing that, you're kind of going, oh my gosh, I need to study. So what can I do for some study materials? We do have a Canvas study group that's available to Murray State students. It provides access to a study guide, practice tests, other study material, and links to more study material, links to videos or sites that you can go to practice questions and that kind of thing. To enroll in the Canvas study group, all you have to do is email me at kfarmer10@murraystate.edu, and I will be glad to get you in the Canvas study group. I'm going to be adding a lot more stuff over the summer, so please do check it out. There's also Learning Express Library. This is available. It's a database through Murray State. It's also available to Kentucky residents through KYVL. So if you're not quite a Murray State student, maybe you're attending one of the community colleges and you're coming to Murray State in the fall and you're wanting to do some practice on the Praxis tests, there's Learning Express Library. It provides access to study guides, and it has about 4 practice tests according to the different areas. So how do I get to Learning Express Library? If I'm a Murray State student, then I can just go to the library homepage at lib.murraystate.edu, or from your Canvas that you have the library link.
And you'll go to Database A to Z, which you'll see the red arrow at the bottom of the screen for Database A to Z. When I click on that, then I'm going to have this list of databases, and I'm going to click on the L to take me to Learning Express Library, and then click on Learning Express Library. You'll be asked to log in if you're a Murray State student at that point. If you're going to it from the Kentucky Virtual Library, you'll go to kyvl.org. You'll click on Login from Home, and you'll need to get a username and password that is given to your public library. You can call the Murray State Information Desk. We'll be glad to give it to you. Or if you know one of your high schools may have access to it also, and you'll just get to it that way, and then up will pop a screen to put it, when you click that link, to put in the username and password. Once you do that, then you can you'll see this screen and you'll click on Learning Express Library, or you can click on the Find a Database link from the quick links, and you'll come here and you'll just scroll down the page and you'll see Learning Express Library. When you come to Learning Express Library, you want to make sure that you register for an account. This will keep track of your progress when you're doing some of the practice tests. So all you have to do is click on register and create an account. It'll be your own account. No one else will see it. It's connected with Learning Express Library. We at the library do not have any control over it. And then to get access to the practice material, what you'll do is you'll scroll through the icons in the center. It usually pops up with Adult Learning Center as the first one, but you want Career Center to choose to get into Learning Express Library. Once you're there in Career Center, you want to choose Prepare for an Occupational Exam. And then once you're in that section of Career Center, on the left side of the screen, the bottom of the Preparing for Occupational Exam selection, you will see Teaching. You need to click on it. And then once you're on this screen, it'll give you some different options for tests that you can prepare for. And Prepare for the Praxis CORE test is one of your options. If you click there, then it will take you here to where you have an ebook that you can download to your computer. It's about 150 pages. And then you will also have practice tests that you can take, and they'll score them automatically and time you just like you would be doing if you were taking the practice test or the real test. Also, for some more review on various math skills, reading skills, grammar skills that you have, in the College Center, there is a math skill review, reading and grammar skill. Just choose that as one of the other centers, and it can take you to that for other practice. Some other suggestions, Purdue OWL has a great section reviewing grammar, and for math review, the Khan Academy has specific courses outlined with videos reviewing the various different areas that are on the Praxis test. If you're in the Canvas course, I have links to the specific sections that particularly pertain to the math section of the Praxis. But there's some great videos that review the various concepts, and they'll take you and build you through it. There are also some other things that you could probably Google and find. So how to register for the test. To register for the test, you need to go to ets.org, and then in the center of the page, you'll see the Praxis series, and you just need to click on that. When you come to this page, this is what you'll see when you come to this page. You'll see the quick link list, and just click on Register for a Test. Here, then you'll come to this screen. It has lots of different information. If you want to see test center and dates, there's the link at the top, and some other different things. If you need accommodations, maybe you get services from Student Disability Services, there's a list there of a link there to a list of things that need to be done to get accommodations.
This can be either for physical or maybe some learning accommodations that you may need. So if you have a hard time sitting and you have a medical 504 that allows you to get up after a certain while to give you extra time for a test because you can't sit there, you need to make sure you're going through this process with Student Disability Services on campus. Then you'll click on Register Online for the test to get to the registration form. If you do not have an account with Praxis, you will need to click on New User, Create an Account to create an account. You'll go through this form, complete the form. It's 2 pages. Some of it just gives some more demographic information that you'll need to register. And they'll save your information here, so it'll always pop up anytime you go into register for a Praxis test. Then it usually brings you back to this page again, and you'll just put in the login name and the username and password that you created when you registered. It's then going to bring you here to where you can either click on your current test scores, manage your profile and all that kind of stuff, or just click on where you see the red arrow to register for a test. This is just some of the legally gobbledygook that you always have to sign when you're registering for anything, and you're going to click I agree. When you actually register for the test, in order to save your spot, you need to make sure that you have a credit card ready to pay for the test. You'll go through this information will pop up filled up for you as if you've already registered, so you don't have to worry about trying to fill this in. You just need to make sure it's correct. And then you'll fill in your background information. Just kind of guess at it. You don't have to be perfect with it. Then you'll come to select a test, and the certifying state or national agency for Murray State is Kentucky. So you'll select Kentucky, and then the state agency is going to be the Kentucky Educational Standards Board. So make sure that's the one you choose, and then you'll click search. It'll come up with a list of tests that are available for the Kentucky Standards Board. You'll scroll down and find the test that you need to take. If this is the first time you're taking the Praxis CORE, I would choose the Core Academic Skills for Educators Combined, just to kind of see where I am, and then break it apart into the individual. But if it works better for you to scheduling it individually, go ahead. It's not a problem. You can schedule it individually. Just note that it will cost more. It'll be $85 per test. It's $135 if it's combined. After that, you'll come to this screen, and you'll click the button that says Schedule Computer Test. You'll come here, put in your zip code, and it will pop up a list of test centers that are available. Closest to you, closest to your zip code. There is a test center here on Murray State University campus. I'm just going to click select, and it'll pop up tests that are available to take that test. So if I wanted to do it on March 6th, I'm going to click on March 6th, and it's going to give me the available time, and I'm just going to click on the available time. And then it's going to take me to the screen to review any test prep that may be available, or review the payment options and complete the payment information at that point. So that's kind of taking you through the registration. So some frequently asked questions that I'm always asked about the Praxis. When will I receive my scores? As of this video, there is the possibility, I heard from someone where they received their reading and math scores when they took the test. Back in February, that wasn't the case. You will receive an official score report on ETS within 2 to 3 weeks on your reading and math. It can take up to 4 weeks for your writing scores. You may receive one set of scores one day. It may be 2 days later that you receive the other set, and it may be a week later that you get the writing. It doesn't, just because you took them all 3 at once, does not mean that all 3 are going to pop up there at the same time. Do I have to take all the tests together? No. You can take them separately. Just note that it will cost more to take them separately. What do I need to do if I have accommodations? If
if you have, you need to have your accommodations approved by ETS before registering. Don't wait to do them after registering. They won't accept them. The Office of Student Disability Services at Murray State University can help you with this process. They all know all what to do. They've been through it with several other students. So please don't be afraid to ask for the accommodations if you need it. When can I retake the test if I need to? You must wait 21 days after taking the test before you can retest. If you have any further questions about the Praxis CORE case test, please contact me at kfarmer10@murraystate.edu. I will be glad to answer any questions about the test that you might have, or point you in a direction of someone that can answer it for you. I'm available during the academic year and during the summer to answer questions. So don't just think because it's summer that you can't ask me a question. So all you do is send me an email and I'll be glad to answer it. So have a great rest of the day and have a great time taking this test.